In this video, I'm going to break down the case for a $50 million Bitcoin and, more importantly for you, how to save your Bitcoin, stack as much Bitcoin as possible, and reduce your taxes on the future amount of Bitcoin that you're going to have, especially as it continues to rise in nominal terms. So without further ado, let's break down what I am talking about here. And this is time sensitive, right? Please watch this video before April 15th, 2024, if possible. Okay. And I think you're going to be very happy. There are going to be parts of this video that are controversial. There are going to be parts of this video that are not popular and people are going to click off by. But I'm trying to give you the best information, not necessarily information that is the most clickable, because we are going to talk about taxes, but we'll get to that more in just a moment. So, how do we get ahead of the future Bitcoin millionaires now? A lot of people have not yet bought Bitcoin. I'm getting a lot of messages from people that are looking to only buy their first Bitcoins now, or only get into Bitcoin for the first time ever. So the millionaires are coming, the high net worth people are coming. So my encouragement is do not wait. Back when Bitcoin was $20,000, just barely a year ago, people were waiting. They were waiting on the sidelines, waiting for 15 grand. When it went up to $30,000, I said the same thing. Do not wait. When it went up to $40,000, I said the same thing. Do not wait. When it went up to $50,000, I said the same thing. Do not wait. When it went up to $60,000, it's the same thing. Do not wait. And now here we're at $70,000. Before you know it, we'll be at 80,000, 90,000. Then we're at the very legendary 100 grand of Bitcoin. And from there, it could be dramatic. So do not wait. There's always a chance Bitcoin goes down in terms of dollars, but the probability is that we will perpetually go higher. And that is because right now, there are about 14 million Bitcoin left that have not been lost. You often hear everyone in the Bitcoin space talk about 21 million, 21 million, 21 million Bitcoin, but the reality is it's actually much less than 21 million. It's actually probably closer to 14 million. We don't know exactly how many because we don't know how many are lost, but as bullish as all your moon math is, as bullish as you are on 21 million being the hard cap for Bitcoin, the reality is there was a much lower, much softer, but much lower cap, probably around 14 to 15 million Bitcoin. So it's not that there will be 21 million whole coiners in the future. It's that there would be less than 14 million whole coiners in the future. And when you do that, that's pretty amazing math. That's about a third of the Bitcoins that are lost to some degree. And they're probably going to be more lost in the future as people do not have their UTXO management properly down. Now, let's assume that there's roughly 70 million millionaires. Now, when I'm talking about 70 million millionaires, I'm talking about in purchasing power, okay? We'll get to the fiat debasement in a moment. But in terms of purchasing power, let's say there's 70 million millionaires here. Now, what does that mean? If there's 70 million millionaires, okay, 70 million millionaires, 14 million Bitcoin roughly, and again, 90% of these Bitcoin are not on exchanges. They are being hodled by the crazy people like me, like Michael Saylor, like Tim Draper, and like the millionaires that have already bought the Bitcoin. That means even forgetting all those people I just mentioned, there's roughly 0.2 Bitcoin per millionaire, roughly 1/5 of one Bitcoin for every millionaire on the face of the planet. That's something really to keep in mind. I hear from people all the time, oh, Luke, I'm too late. I only have half a Bitcoin. You own way more Bitcoin than the average millionaire will ever be able to buy. If you own half a Bitcoin, you own a lot of Bitcoin. If you own 5 Bitcoin, you own 10 times as much as what is a lot of Bitcoin. If you own 8 Bitcoin or 20 Bitcoin or 30 Bitcoin or 50 Bitcoin, okay, inherently, if you own more than half of Bitcoin, you should start thinking about your stack in terms of how many other stacks worth of millionaires do I have, right? If I have 1 Bitcoin, maybe I have 5 times the stack of the average millionaire. You should start thinking in that way, right? Don't start pricing yourself in terms of whole coiners. Start pricing yourself in terms of millionaires. And every 0.2 of a Bitcoin you stack, you're stacking another millionaire's worth of Bitcoin. But again, this is forgetting that only 10% of those 14 million Bitcoin left on exchanges actually are in play here. Okay. Now, if we assume that it's roughly 1/10, technically it's 1.8 million at the time of recording, but we're looking at a long-term time horizon. That number's been trending now for 3 years now. 1.8 versus 1.4. Okay. I get it. Haters in the comments, the math's not off, but we're going with a long-term assumption here. Okay. If we assume at some point that we have 1.4 million Bitcoin left on exchanges, okay, 1/10 of the 14 million, that means that there are 0.2 Bitcoin per millionaire. Okay, mind blown. That's really important to keep in mind that 2% of one Bitcoin is how much is probably realistically going to be available for the millionaires. Forget the Michael Saylors. Forget the Larry Finks, forget the ETFs, forget the Saudis, okay? Forget the energy companies, forget the massive Bitcoin miners, forget the public Bitcoin miners, forget the billionaires, forget the middle class, forget the bottom 5.2 billion people on the face of the planet, and forget all the Bitcoin that are going to be lost in unspendable UTXOs. Forget all of that. Just from a sheer, straight, flat, evenly distribution of Bitcoin between millionaires, not even including a Pareto distribution or a power law distribution, just from that alone, we are looking at 2% of one Bitcoin per millionaire. And people tell me I'm too bullish. Okay. People that think that Bitcoin's only going to $1 million. Okay. Do you really think Bitcoin's going to only $1 million if it's going to take 50, at least 50 millionaires? Like to get to total up to one Bitcoin? Like, do you really think that $1 million Bitcoin is logical? Or perhaps you're going to start to realize you maybe are not bullish enough. Okay. So if there's 2% of a Bitcoin per millionaire, let's go through this here. If we assume that the average millionaire wants a significant exposure to Bitcoin over the next 20 years, 20 years is reasonable, right? 5 years is perhaps a little short, but I think it's safe to say that in 20 years, many millionaires are going to want a 10, 30, 40% allocation to Bitcoin. Not all of them, but a significant number of them. Okay. And also keep in mind that we're talking in nominal terms. So in that time, we are going to be significantly debasing political currency. Okay. And just to give a quick side note of the example of that, I am 24 years old. A child being born today, by the time they are the age of 35 in the United States of America, is going to be paying $3 million for a new house. Not even new house, for the median house. Okay, the median house in the United States in 35 years is projected to be $3 million. You will have to be a multi-millionaire in terms of political currency to buy a median house in America without a mortgage. And that's for a 35-year-old. What happens when that 35-year-old is 50 years old? Those are the children being born today. Those people are alive right now. Okay, you have to keep that in mind. That these millionaires with $2 million net worth, they're going to have $10 million in a decade or two, simply from the debasement of USD alone. So we have to keep that in mind, that we are printing significantly more political currency in that 20-year time frame. So in that time frame, we can assume logically that there will easily be $1 million nominal of US political currency units chasing that 2% per Bitcoin per millionaire, not factoring in an exponential distribution, assuming a fair and even distribution. Okay, that is $50 million per Bitcoin in nominal terms. Easily. Okay, you might call me a moon boy. You might call me, as illogical. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I don't think most of you watching, myself included probably, are mentally prepared for a $500,000 Bitcoin, let alone a $5 million Bitcoin, let alone a $50 million Bitcoin. Okay, see, some people that haven't been around for very long, that haven't watched my videos for very long, call me a moon boy and being parabolic for saying $50 million Bitcoin. Oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm trying to be as conservative as I can here. Even with a moderate number of current millionaires and a moderate amount of political currency unit debasement, and assuming an even distribution of sats and Bitcoin, not an exponential distribution, even with all those things considered, we're still probably looking at multiple millions of dollars chasing a Bitcoin. Okay, we're still probably looking at a 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, $50 million Bitcoin. Okay, if you really want me to get in the moon math, $50 million is nothing. But for the sake of being relatively conservative in this video, looking at the next 20, 30 years or so, it's entirely possible in nominal terms, we could see that a 20 million, 30 million, 50 million, $100 million Bitcoin. If you think it's absurd, ask Max Kaiser. He was buying when Bitcoin was 30 cents a mere 15 years ago. Ask Alex Jones. He was given by Max Kaiser. Alex Jones, Arian Russell Brand, and Alec Baldwin were given 10,000 Bitcoin. Okay, Alex Jones was given 10,000 Bitcoin alone. He had $50,000 in Bitcoin barely 10 years ago. Then he lost. Now it's worth $1 billion nominal terms, not real terms because the dollar's debased over the last 10 years, but still, he had a significant price increase from a mere $50,000 of Bitcoin alone. So, in nominal terms, there is no upper limit to Bitcoin's price. This is the important point I'm trying to notice. And therefore, because I think respectfully, most of us are not mentally prepared for this kind of upside, the time to prepare is now. Most people are procrastinating buying Bitcoin. You know this. You talk to your friends, family, coworkers. Most people say, oh, Bitcoin's interesting. wow, I'll look into it someday. And then since then, Bitcoin's doubled and tripled. Okay, I've talked to so many people, my loved ones, my community, my family, my coworkers, okay, from my former jobs and my former school, college career. Okay, I've talked to, everyone puts it off. Everyone wants to call Bitcoin a scam. They put off learning about it. They put off buying it. Once they buy it, they put off their self-custody. Once they put off the self-custody, they put off their multi-sig adoption. They put off their tax preparation, which I'll be getting to more in the end of this video. Okay. The time to prepare is now when most people are procrastinating, okay? And don't be one of those people. So, how do you properly expose yourself to as much upside as possible with minimal downside risk as possible, okay? If Bitcoin is going to go up like that, how do you avoid becoming the Alex Jones of the future? If you have $50,000 of Bitcoin in nominal terms, and that eventually goes to tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars per Bitcoin, or your portfolio in nominal terms, how do you prepare yourself against theft? How do you prepare yourself against the possibility of passing? How do you prepare yourself from a tax perspective? We'll be getting that into one moment because taxes are one of the largest threats to your Bitcoin. The single largest expense in your life is not your children, it's not your food, it's not your shelter, it's not your housing. Your biggest expense in your life is taxes, both in the time it takes for you to pay your taxes every year, because literally a third of your paycheck, a third of your working hours being siphoned away to the government. You have hundreds of hours every year being siphoned away to the government just to pay your taxes, which, by the way, it's important noting that there was no income tax before 1913. You might want to look into that if you didn't know that. But the point is that right now, you can buy up to 1/10 of a Bitcoin in your Roth IRA for the 2023 taxable year. The deadline is April 15th to have that. Let me repeat that and break that down because something there doesn't sound quite right. Okay, what I just said is that we can buy up to 1/10 of a Bitcoin in a Roth IRA for the 2023 taxable year. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, how on earth can I buy Bitcoin in 2023? It's not 2023. You're right. You're astute for noting that. However, a lot of people don't know you can contribute to your Roth IRA up to April 15th, the year after that taxable year. So if you're watching this in 2024, you can still contribute to your 2023 Roth IRA. And the same thing's going to be true next year and the year after that. And so this is really important to keep in mind. And we're going to get to why. Because right now you can buy a tenth of Bitcoin of a Bitcoin in your Roth IRA. Okay. Next year, if Bitcoin price is higher, you may not be able to lock a tenth of a Bitcoin in that Roth IRA. You can right now, and the deal was a lot better last year. Okay, last year when Bitcoin was about $20,000, you could have done about half of Bitcoin. You could have done well over double, nearly triple the Bitcoin. Well, actually, you could have done triple the Bitcoin a year ago, is what you can right now. Now, the deadline's April 15th, so I'm going to give you some actual steps to the end of the video if you want to take advantage of that. But the deadline is April 15th. Do not wait until the 15th. Do not wait till after the 15th. Do this before the 15th. Okay. Additionally, you can also buy another tenth of a Bitcoin in your Roth IRA for this taxable year, 2024, at the time of recording. Okay. That means in the next 7 days, the next week, you could lock in 1/5 of a Bitcoin in a tax advantage Roth IRA account if you are an American. That's a big deal. Now, obviously, if you're watching this, you probably already own Bitcoin. You probably already own Bitcoin in a variety of places, but this might be new information to you. You can buy Bitcoin in a tax advantage account right now. And even if zero point 0.2 Bitcoin does not seem like a significant amount to you, especially in comparison to the rest of your stack, it still could very well be important. Let's say you have 2 Bitcoin. Don't you want to have 10% of your Bitcoin, at least in a Roth IRA, that portion of your Bitcoin is growing tax-free? It's worth something to consider, right? So let's get on with it a little bit. So now notice that, of course, the 0.2 I'm talking about now is the same amount of Bitcoin per millionaire, or 10x amount per millionaire on exchanges right now. Of course, that's not coincidence. I'm breaking down this math in a similar way, trying to emphasize how much that is, right? Even if you own 2 Bitcoin and 0.2 Bitcoin doesn't seem like that big of a stack to you, at the end of the day, that's going to be envied by many, many people. Okay, most people, let alone most millionaires and most people. Okay, most people. There are way more people than there are millionaires. Okay, there's a lot of people. They're gonna really be amazed. Wow, you stacked 20 million Sats in your Roth IRA. Oh my goodness, you're so lucky. You got all that tax-free growth. You're not lucky. You took advantage, and you watched Luke Broyles' video where he broke it down. So you can buy that right away. But the question, of course, people ask me is, Luke, how on earth can I own self-custody Bitcoin in my Roth IRA? I thought I only have to do ETFs in my exchange. I thought I can only buy MicroStrategy stock in my Roth IRA. I thought I only have so many limits in my IRAs, my retirement accounts, my pensions, my trusts, and all these things. How on earth can you buy self-custody Bitcoin IRA? Let me tell you, my digital friend. Most people think the only option available to them is to either accept counterparty risk like the ETF or MicroStrategy, or fully exit the retirement system and go into single sig. Okay, most people think those are the only two options, and I'm here to tell you there is not. There is a third option. See, the problem with counterparty risk, the ETF or MicroStrategy option, is that in a long enough time horizon, there is a 100% failure rate. I do not think the ETFs are going to implode this year. I don't even think they're going to implode next year, and probably not the year after that. However, there is a non-zero chance they do at some point implode. Even if they don't implode, the government might do a 6102 confiscation attack, give you fiat currency for your Bitcoin, take your Bitcoin, and it's not theft, it's not communism. It's just giving you the currency equivalent for your Bitcoin. We already did this in 1933 with gold. Hey, gold's outlawed. The government needs gold in the name of national security. We're going to take your gold, but don't worry, we're giving you fiat dollars for it. And then we're going to mark up the price of gold. Like, what do you think is going to happen, people? You watching this, you know the government's insolvent, okay? And really what the government, okay, side note, the problem the government has is a debt to equity problem. They have too much debt, not enough equity. And so if I was the government, what would I do? I would approve the ETFs. Americans, Larry Fink, have fun, buy as much Bitcoin as you can. And then when the rest of the world begins to call me on my bluff of having way too much debt for the equity of the United States, what I would do, if I was the government, what I would do is I would go to the ETF holders and say, ETF holders, there has been a matter of national security in the name of preserving our credit markets, our treasury markets, and the name of saving the American economy. What we got to do is we got to do a 6102, just like we did in 1933. And overnight, we're going to give you cash, the cash equivalent to your account. You have $100,000 in your ETF, your Bitcoin ETF. Good. We're giving $100,000 of cash right now, and we're confiscating your Bitcoin. After all, 9 of the 11 ETFs are backed with Coinbase. It's one phone call, boom, just like that. It's done. We got your Bitcoin. We didn't take it from you. You still have your political currency units. You still have your cash. There's a problem, of course. You got the nominal return back. You didn't get the real Bitcoin back. I get the Bitcoin, you get the cash. I reprice the Bitcoin upwards. We literally did this with gold, people. The United States of America confiscated gold. They took the gold. They increased the price of gold by a factor of 4. Yes, you got all your cash back. You lost 75% of your purchasing power. What do you think is going to happen with the ETFs again, people? So this is the importance of having self-custody always. Now, what I just described might seem outlandish for the next 2 years, the next 5 years, maybe even the next 20 years. But on a long enough time horizon, for your time horizon and for your kids' time horizon, or for your great grandkids' time horizon, at some point, that's going to happen. And so there's no sense in taking that risk now. Okay. People procrastinate far too long. Now, of course, the problem with single sig is that people worry, oh, now I'm a vector point for a criminal, or now I could lose my keys, or what happens when I pass on, right? Those are all legitimate questions. And that's why I work at the Bitcoin Advisor and I shout it out so often on this channel. Yes, it's in my incentive to promote the Bitcoin Advisor because I worked there. I was the first Bitcoin advisor in America. I talk about all the time, but I'm trying to tell you, you're probably going to want what we're offering. And I'm trying to tell you that we're probably only going to have higher and higher demand in relation to their supply of people. We are skyrocketing the number of people on our team, and yet we still can't keep up with demand. I cannot keep up with demand. Our whole team cannot keep up with demand. I'm trying to tell you, millions of people are going to want this. And the best time to figure this out is now. Because in a few years, when everyone wants what the Bitcoin Advisor is offering, when everyone wants the cloud custody multi-sig model that we're offering, they'll be able to buy way less Bitcoin per annual contribution to their Roth IRA than you can do right now, which is why I'm trying to, in a friendly way, encourage you to consider doing it as soon as possible, even if it doesn't feel like it's that imperative, that important. So what the Bitcoin Advisor offers is a collaborative custody multi-sig arrangement. Hopefully you know what that is. If you don't, that's okay. I'll get to more information about where you can learn about that. Now, it's fully compliant with US regulations, okay, to have self-custody Bitcoin within your Roth IRA. And this is very straightforward. This is simple. If you have a single sig Bitcoin wallet setup, the government cannot verify that you're actually holding the Bitcoin. The government cannot verify that you're not spending it, right? The whole point of having a Roth IRA is to incentivize taxpayers to hold on to their assets indefinitely, perpetually, so that they retire upon their retirement age, 65, 59 and a half, whatever the age is for your particular retirement account. They can't verify that within a single sig. But in a collaborative custody arrangement, the government can verify, oh, Luke Broyles he has his Bitcoin within this Roth IRA. We can verify he's not spent it yet. He is fully in compliance with American tax law. And so then now this is a regulated setup, right? This is the beauty of collateral custody. Yes, there are trade-offs to everything. Yes, there are trade-offs to this versus having single sig all buried in your backyard. But there are differences here, and this is one of the main benefits. It is a way to work within a regulatory compliant way without having to give up the counterparty risk. This is really important. I'll get to this in just a moment, okay? But again, it's worth emphasizing this. Yes, really, okay? This is literally, it feels too good to be true for me saying this, but I'll say it again. You can literally buy 10 times the amount of Bitcoin per millionaire in last year's taxable year, 2023, in tax-free growth accounts with self-custody, okay? You do not have counterparty risk because it is your self-sovereign self-custody setup. You will not have to pay taxes on that amount of Bitcoin because it's within a tax-free growth Roth IRA, zero taxes on your Bitcoin. It's not just some Bitcoin, it's 10 times the amount of Bitcoin per millionaire left on exchanges. And it's not just this taxable year, it's last year's taxable year. Like, does it get much better than that? I mean, obviously, yes, it does. Were you buying Bitcoin at $1? No, you weren't. But people in 10 years, when Bitcoin's a few $1,000,000, could be looking at you like, oh my goodness, you were buying entire, deca million sat stacks in tax-free growth. Oh, you were so lucky. I mean, like, imagine buying 20 Bitcoin at, a couple $100 in an IRA a few years ago. Like, hello. I mean, really, like how much more do you want me to break it down, people? Okay, seriously. This is a very, very good opportunity. Okay. You are ahead of the next 99.5% of people if you do this. Now, what's the difference with a service offering like the Bitcoin Advisor versus a product offering like Unchained Capital, Casa, Nunchuck? Okay. It's important to clarify the Bitcoin Advisor achieves zero single point of failure, and you can have jurisdictional key arbitrage, and you have unrivaled estate plan protocol. Okay. Let me just break down what that means. If you set up a vault, if you set up a multi-sig vault, you have a key and a product provider. Well, you have two keys. The product provider has one key. That means you have three keys within one taxable jurisdiction within the US. If you work with the Bitcoin Advisor and achieve jurisdictional arbitrage in your own multi-sig collaborative custody setup, you have keys in multiple countries. So let's take me, for example. Let's say Luke Broyles, theoretically, I'm not saying I do or I don't, but let's say as an example, I have a Roth IRA set up in this precise setup. I own Bitcoin, self-custody Bitcoin in a Roth IRA that's going to compound and grow perpetually in my working career, tax-free. And let's say in that vault, I have three keys. One key in the United States of America, one key in Australia, and one key, let's say, in Vietnam. Now, all of a sudden, you can see quite the intrigue here. Is my entire stack on that setup? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not is a good idea. But let's say I did that. Now, all of a sudden, if the government were to confiscate my Bitcoin, my Australian key and my Vietnamese key can say, oh, Luke's under duress. We don't believe that it's right to give up the key, right? This is exactly what happened in the trucker protest from Canada a couple years ago during that event, the events that transpired there. See, this is the beauty. You have your Bitcoin, you have it in self-custody, and because your keys are jurisdictionally arbitraged in different countries, that means that even if the government came after you, you could if all of a sudden the risk reward changed and you no longer wanted to be in the United States system, it is very advantageous to you. You do not get this advantage with a product offering where all three keys are in the United States and you're still a single point of failure because you own two keys. One happens if you lose them. One happens if someone comes after you. One happens if you store in the same place. One happens if you don't have your configuration file backed up appropriately. And of course, one happens if the government does a 6102. Unfortunately, you have all three keys in the United States, and now you have to make a trade-off between lying under oath and, of course, handing over the Bitcoin. With Bitcoin Advisor, you don't have to deal with any of those probabilities. Okay. And again, people, I could be promoting any Bitcoin company right now. I'm promoting the one I'm working at. And the reason I'm working there and the reason I'm talking about is because this is personally what I do. People ask me all the time, Luke, what do you do about this? What do you do about that? I'm trying to tell you what exactly I do. Okay. So this is exactly what I do. Now let's get into some more details here. Okay. Now we're not in competition. Bitcoin Advisor is not in competition with the product providers like these companies here that I mentioned before. We are not in competition because it's a different business model. We need those businesses to survive. The Bitcoin Advisor cannot function without amazing, incredible product developers out there building amazing stuff. They are a small yet essential component to the service offering that the Bitcoin Advisor offers. Okay, so now the question is, Maybe you don't think this matters to you. Maybe you've missed the April 15th deadline. Sorry. But of course, you always have this taxable year, next taxable year, and ongoing from there. But let's say for a moment that this let's just expand our time horizon a little bit. Okay. You may not think you need this now. Give it 5 years. Okay, put yourself in your shoes 5 years from now. Do you think you're going to need this? What about the next 10% of adoption? Okay, right now we're maybe at 1% Bitcoin adoption. In reality, I think we're probably way less. What percent of Bitcoiners today, including you watching this, do you think are going to want Bitcoin in their retirement accounts? Just a portion in their retirement accounts like this. I'd argue it's a very high percentage. Okay, I think a very high percentage of today's current adopters of Bitcoin are going to want some percentage of their Bitcoin in this setup, collateral custody multisig that prevents against single points of failure and is tax advantage. The next 10%, the next 10x in adoption, the percentage of them they're going to want this, I would argue, is significantly higher. Okay, now if you think about this, that's a lot of people that are going to want exposure to this. And because it's service-based, can service-based businesses scale? Yes, they can, but inherently, they have a very hard time of scaling because the value proposition is experience. The value proposition is not something that is duplicatable. Okay, I only have 24 hours in my day. Our team is growing and it's growing very quickly. But even if the Bitcoin advisor team is to go up by a factor of 10, if adoption goes up by a factor of 50, our time is still 5 times more scarce. So I say that not trying to be a fear monger. I just say it because it's true. I do believe there are millions of people that are going to want this in the next 5 to 10 years or so. Okay. How many people do you think are going to want this setup? Even if it takes 10 years, it's a lot of people. Okay. And maybe these people have 1 Bitcoin, 5 Bitcoin, or 100 Bitcoin in their single sig setup but maybe some people want a 5%, 10%, or 33% of their stack exposure to this, right? A lot of these people are not going to want 100% of their stack in one location, but they are still going to want a vault to have some percentage of their stack there, okay? And again, why is that? It is cheaper to pay a service provider like the Bitcoin advisor a fee to deal with the tax implications of the given amount of Bitcoin in the vault outside of the taxable umbrella, okay? If you take 0.2 Bitcoin and you put it in this tax advantage account with, let's say, the Bitcoin advisor, you are going to be paying a fee. There is going to be a cost associated with that. However, if you have a long-term time horizon, and I would argue you should, especially if we're talking about a Roth IRA here, okay, if Bitcoin in nominal terms goes to $10 million and you have, let's say a 40% tax rate, at that point, obviously you have a much higher fiat net worth. Maybe those are death taxes, estate taxes, some other form of taxes, but that could potentially be millions of dollars saved, okay? It is cheaper to pay a collateral custody vault provider a fee to help you achieve that, to avoid the tax implications, than it is to pay those tax implications. It is cheaper to pay that than to not do that, okay? And this is what people don't, this is what people really don't understand. This also goes to expand to an even larger argument, okay? Additionally, the only thing cheaper than an ongoing account-based fiat fee is a sats-based fiat fee. A service that helps you stack more sats than the cost of the service is cheaper than a product offering that charges 100x less, okay? The Bitcoin advisor, because it's a service offering, charges a fee based on the sat stack. Other businesses, because they're product oriented, charge a fiat based fee, a flat fiat based fee, they're not denominated by the amount of stack, okay? And people often say, oh, well, if I have a large stack, I'm paying the service provider a much higher fee than the product provider. Yes, yes, you are. The reason is because incentives. If I'm a product offering and I'm charging a flat fiat fee, my incentive is sell as much products as possible. If I'm charging a service fee, my incentive is help the client stack as much Bitcoin as possible. And this is a difference most people do not understand. The reason people come to the Bitcoin advisor is to have their IRA set up with it. The reason people come to the Bitcoin advisor is to protect against single points of failure, to protect against these things. The reason people stay is because we help them stack more Bitcoin than they would have otherwise. Okay, you got dozens of the best Bitcoiners on the planet in your team, in your back pocket, supporting you and helping you figure out all the ways to maximize your UTXOs, to maximize where are you buying your Bitcoin, what exchanges are you using, to maximize your taxable implications, whether that's Roth IRAs or trusts or pensions or 401ks or whatever. Our team's goal is to help you buy as much Bitcoin as possible. If you're paying a small fiat denominated fee versus a larger sat denominated fee, if this fee is paying for itself and more, this is cheaper than this. And a lot of people do not understand that. And I think I made my point there, but and that might take some time to dawn on. But the only thing cheaper than a cheap fee is a more expensive fee with a value ratio of a value proposition, which then means the service is essentially free. It's going to take a lot of people to get their head around that, right? But again, literally, it's cheaper to pay more in expense to have a more expensive custody setup solution if that means you're saving more in taxes, because then it's literally free to do it, right? So if you set up this IRA and you pay the Bitcoin advisor to set it up, like it's still the best option to do if you're trying to save on the taxes and have that tax-free growth, because you might be paying millions of dollars in nominal terms. So it is a significant value proposition to set up the IRA with self-custody, zero single point of failure, and jurisdictional arbitrage. Okay, millions of people are going to want that. Okay, because it is in a tax advantage account where you have tax-free Bitcoin growth, fully protected against losing your keys. If you lose your keys, that's fine. Your Bitcoin's fine. If you pass away, that's fine. Your beneficiaries get your Bitcoin. There has zero counterparty risk because you're not trusting exchange. You're not even trusting the Bitcoin advisor. The Bitcoin advisor could become corrupt. It could be shut down by the government. We could be bankrupt, and your Bitcoin is still fine. Again, even the 6102 attack, okay? At what other point in human history can you have assets within America's taxable situation that if America decided to come after the holders of that asset, that the asset was geographically distributed in multiple jurisdictions? When and what other point in human history has that been possible? It's a completely mind-blowing proposition. You own Bitcoin in a retirement account in the United States with tax advantage benefits in the United States, and yet two of your three keys are elsewhere in the United States or outside the United States. It is absolutely a mind-boggling proposition. It gets me really, really excited. So millions will want this, except they won't have the chance to buy nearly as much Bitcoin in this setup as you could right now. Okay, inherently, most people are never going to buy 2 Bitcoin. They're never going to buy 0.2 of a Bitcoin. And probably most millionaires are never even going to be able to buy 0.02 Bitcoin, 2% of a Bitcoin. If most millionaires can't do that, what's the average person going to do? The average person with $500,000 in the retirement fund or $50,000 in their retirement fund or just trying to get by, like, what is the average person going to do, right? Most people are never going to be able to buy as much Bitcoin as you can right now in a tax advantage account. It's just simply not going to be possible. And you have this opportunity right now to do it. Okay. So do not wait for Bitcoin price to go up, because that means the amount of Bitcoin that you can stack on this setup is going to continue to fall. Okay. It's important to keep in mind. And this is one unfortunate reality with the American retirement system, as well as every other retirement system around the world, that the taxable limit is $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, whatever it is for you, depending on your age and what year. But that limit, because it's denominated in fiat, goes down perpetually in terms of Bitcoin. That's really important to keep in mind. If Bitcoin doubles, the number of Bitcoin you can have in the amount of Bitcoin you can have in ideal tax advantage accounts goes down by half, right? So this is really important to keep in mind that yes, if you're holding the same amount of Bitcoin in the end, you have the same amount of Bitcoin, but the amount of Bitcoin you can have in this specific tax advantage account is going to fall dramatically, okay? And I'll show you where you can do that in a link below in just a moment. So even if you want to keep the rest of your Bitcoin, and again, whatever amount that is, I don't care if it's 2 Bitcoin, I don't care if it's 200 Bitcoin or 2,000 Bitcoin, whatever it is, you can keep it elsewhere in a single sig, non-tax advantage account. You can do whatever you want, KYC, non-KYC, whoever, whatever. But why not? Especially if you're believing in Bitcoin and you have a multi-decade time horizon for Bitcoin, why not grab a quick fifth of a Bitcoin, a quick 0.2 of a Bitcoin, and a tax advantage collateral custody account, right? If you have 1 Bitcoin sitting on a ledger in your home drawer and you're worried about someone breaking in and stealing it, and I know it's not technically on the ledger, but I'm oversimplifying here. Like if you have your Bitcoin on various single sig wallets in various places in your safety deposit security box, like if you have 1 Bitcoin of subs, why not take a fifth of it and smash reallocate it to a tax advantage account? Why not do it? Yes, you're now going to have 2 accounts. And yes, it's going to be one more thing to do, but you're going to be so glad. You're going to be so glad when you hit that retirement age and you save so much money on your taxes. Okay. And yeah, maybe the government dissolves a Roth IRA in 30 years. Yeah, who knows? Maybe. But if you have your self-custody and your keys are jurisdictionally arbitraged, it doesn't matter. Even if they confiscate all the wealth and all the IRAs in America, they're going to get to yours last. It's something really important to think about. But the point is, why not just go ahead and do it? Diversify your Bitcoin, both from a tax advantage perspective aka protecting your upside while also reducing your downside, reducing single points of failure. Okay, it is just one more way to hedge against your own risk as a single point of failure, as well as taxes, which nobody likes to talk about. So the encouragement is get off zero Bitcoin and begin thinking now about your single points of failure and your self custody setup, as well as the taxable risks to your future. Okay, if you are not thinking about these things, you are not bullish enough. Okay, like I said, I know that $50 million of Bitcoin is going to sound crazy to most people, but please think in time horizons of years and decades, not months and quarters. If you're looking at 20 years from now, a $50 million Bitcoin, considering that most millionaires could not even buy 2% of a Bitcoin left on exchanges, like, please, people, your primary point of concern with Bitcoin is probably price volatility. Oh, Bitcoin's up 8% today. Or, oh, it crashed 12% last week. I can't believe it. It's so volatile. No, 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 please don't be the Alex Jones. Respectfully. Okay, Max Kaiser gave Alex Jones 10,000 Bitcoin when they were only worth $5 barely a decade ago, and then he lost it. Please don't be the modern example of Alex Jones. If you have $50,000 of Bitcoin, you have to consider that even to a much smaller degree, even if it doesn't go up to a factor as much as it did for Alex Jones, even if it goes up by a factor of 10, you're going to be thinking about these things. If it goes up by a factor of 30, you're going to be thinking about these things. And the worst possible thing you can do is buy Bitcoin at $500 a coin and not start thinking about the taxable implications of what you have bought until it has already gone up by a factor of 100 to $50,000 of Bitcoin. And so please, likewise, today, if you are thinking about Bitcoin in a multi-year, multi-decade, multi-generational time horizon, please take these things seriously. Yes, I'm incentivized to talk about this because I work at the Bitcoin Advisor and because it's something I literally help people do all day, every day. But it's also because it's in your own self-interest. I want to see you keep as much Bitcoin as you possibly can. I don't want you to hand it over to the state. So please consider the link in the description, the form in the description. Okay, if you're watching this before April 15th, really even before April 13th, you probably still have time to meet your 2023 taxable maximum for your Roth IRA contribution. If you did not contribute to your Roth IRA in 2023 and you have the money lying around, or you have Bitcoin that you'd be happy to convert to fiat and then convert to the Roth IRA, that's still very possible. Okay, if you bought Bitcoin at $35,000 and it doubled to $70,000, it is possibly, depending on your situation, you know, you know, not advice, but for me, if I bought Bitcoin at 35 grand and it doubled to 70 grand, I would much rather sell it, take the taxable hit on a minor double at the bottom, and then convert that to a tax-free growth perpetually in the future than to not do that, get scared about paying the Bitcoin advisor a fee, get scared about the taxable implications of this relatively small portion of my larger stack, and then not do it, and then have to deal with those tax. Okay. If you did not contribute to your Roth IRA or not contribute to it fully, this is a very legitimate path for you to consider for tax-free growth. Okay, now I know this video has been a little heavy-handed. I know this video has been a little bit long, and I know it's going to be a little annoying for some people, but please, I was in El Salvador last week, and there were multiple people, even in El Salvador, Bitcoiners, that were orange pilled so hard they were going down to El Salvador for a week, going to El Zante and Berlin and other local Bitcoin circular economies here, and they did not even know about this. They have a good amount of Bitcoin, and they're not thinking about the taxable implications. Yes, you may want some Bitcoin elsewhere in the world on a single sig or something else, but please at least consider some portion in these. They are sitting right there. Leverage and maximize the fiat institutions that are still existing today as much as you possibly can. This is what Michael Saylor is doing. He's leveraging the fiat system as much as he possibly can as it continues to decline and convert it to Bitcoin, convert it to Bitcoin, convert it to Bitcoin. So please, likewise, consider doing the same. Take some amount of the free opportunity that the government is giving you, saying, hey, $8,000 right now, you can buy Bitcoin and you won't have to pay taxes on it. This is our promise. And now they may break that promise, which is why you cannot trust the ETF, but you can do self-custody. And so please click the link in the description. There is a 5-hour free self-custody course, a free collateral custody course, 5-hour course, link in the description. It's just a very simple form. You put in what your wishes are, and you put in what you want to get. You get a 38-page self-custody checklist document to make sure you don't have single points of failure. And if you do it immediately, if you do it as quick as possible, there is still a very real possibility that you can have your allocation done before April 15th, the deadline, right? Even if you just get it cash over that line into the Roth IRA, then we can work on after April 15th, getting it converted to Bitcoin, getting it done. But please consider doing it now, because if you wait another 2 days, that is 1/10, or another 5 days or so, that is 1/10 of one Bitcoin you could have gotten in a Roth IRA just like that you didn't, because you didn't understand this was an opportunity. And so I'm trying to help you see this is an opportunity to get 1/10 of a Bitcoin in a tax advantage account. Okay. Now, if you didn't, if you missed the deadline, that's okay. You can still maximize your 2024 year, but then you're going to have to wait until 2025 for your next opportunity. And by then, probably Bitcoin price is going to be higher, and we're talking about way less sats. Ultimately, it's not that you got lucky, it's that you stopped procrastinating and you understood that you had to take self custody, and you understood you had to start thinking about these things now. It's inconvenient, it's annoying, but you will thank yourself later. Thanks.